Welcome to the Human Evolution Podcast, where we dive deep into the science, philosophies, and strategies that create real and lasting change. I'm Goldstein, and here we leave traditional self-help behind and map the real terrain of true personal development.
Why does it seem like we are all addicted to trauma? We all suffer, or at some level, like we're all on the spectrum of suffering from all the things that are going wrong. It doesn't matter how centered we are in our own lives. There's so much going on in the world right now. There's so many terrible things. There's a lot of good things as well, but those don't usually get reported on. But it seems like just the way that the news networks are set up, social media and shows in general, like all the crime shows, all the crime podcasts, all the true crime stuff, not just the Law and Orders of the world, even though those are a lot of times they pull those from the headlines as well and from real court cases. Looks as though we are all as a human race really into the things that we shouldn't be into. And why is it so prevalent, and why are the news networks and everybody in the media so good at capturing our attention with bad news, I guess?
So I've got so much to say about this, actually. So so I'll start off with the basic premise of what's going on here in my mind. And again, please understand this is my view on things, which isn't necessarily a societally accepted view or anything else. But when it's all said and done, the human being, and we've discussed this before, is conditioned to survive, not necessarily to thrive. That means that there's more of a prevalence in your mind to focus in on negative things that might hurt you than there is a prevalence in your mind to focus in on the positive things that will make you better. And so just naturally speaking, your brain is going to be more wired to look at things that could be dangerous to you. And when you start hearing this news, your brain is naturally going to be asking, it's going to constantly be analyzing, how is this going to affect me? How is this dangerous for me? And so that is just our wiring, because as a biological species, our DNA is set up to make sure that we can create the next generation. We create the next generation by avoiding the saber-toothed tiger, not necessarily by having a comfortable bed to sleep on. I just think naturally, wiring speaking, we're going to be filtering more for the negative things in our lives. And so that is the first step of it. And I think that news media has done something very, very powerful with this in terms of the fact that they know that this is a human predisposition. I think that there was a lot of research done about this in the 1970s, 80s, where they actually tried to create a good news network. And it ended up dying within just a few months because no one was interested, right? It's just there's so much good happening in the world, but the moment that people hear about it, they just don't connect with it because it doesn't really make a difference to them. Whereas if there's something bad in the world, the brain goes, how could this possibly affect me? How is this dangerous for me? And everything in your neurology says, I need to find out more about this. Let me go down this rabbit hole. So that is the first step in it. I've got a lot more to say about it, but I'll stop there because I just don't want to motor mouth my way through it.
Yeah, pick on Fox News here for a minute. And as most people know, apolitical, I'm very upset with the system as a whole. I agree with both sides on certain points, and I disagree with either side. And I also am annoyed that we only have two sides to pick from. That bothers me as well. I will pick on
yes.
these days. But again, there's many things about the Republican Party which I was kind of leaning towards, growing up on a farm and the military and law enforcement and everything else. There are certain things about their policies that I'm like, yes, that's the way. I like that conservative nature to it. But I also think that on the other side of things, people should be able to live however they want, and we shouldn't have laws governing what people do to their bodies and everything else. So anyway, that aside, I will pick on Fox News only because Roger Ailes did something brilliant. I think starting in the 60s and 70s, he was the one under Rupert Murdoch who started the Fox News channel. And what he was trying to do, even back, I think as far back as Nixon, is he would meet with every president and he would say, I want to start a White House news channel. He would try to convince each president that to have an embedded news source instead of using the national news outlets as they were at the time, which there weren't many. And he finally got it to work, or he finally got somebody to finally convince Rupert Murdoch, or whoever was in charge at the time, to do it. Just again, human psychology. He's like, if you have a news outlet that's based solely on politics and whatever party is in the White House, you immediately get 50% of the population immediately. And then you can always anger them towards the other side or vice versa. So that was the whole tactic behind it. So that's how the whole thing got started, is he brought it in at about, I think, a third of the would normally cost to put a channel out. So he came in at a discount, but he specifically, because of everything you just mentioned, just trying to polarize and just trying to get people to look for the bad things. He was like, it doesn't matter who's in power at the time, even though obviously they're conservative leaning now. He's like, the idea is to capture 50% of that. Was interesting. And that just goes to show you, but it was very intentional. Of course, once Fox does it, whatever year this was, I forget, I should look this up. But whatever Fox gets popular for doing these things and being very polarizing, well, what do the other networks do? They all fall in line and they all kind of pick their corners. And there are some that say that they're, middle of the road, which may be true, but it's pretty hard to find these days. So anyway, that's just a little anecdote about the news.
But to take that even further, it's like, it's one of the things that I realized so blatantly in life is like, you and I can disagree on so many things, but the way, like, and the example I often have in my mind about this is like, imagine like a mother-in-law and a bride that don't agree on anything until that they actually both see something wrong with the husband. At which point in time, they become the best of friends, going like, I can't believe he does this. Oh my God, you have no clue. He just never stops doing it to me either. It's the most common way to create a form of kinship among people is to have a common enemy. And I think that the news media does this very well in terms of the fact that they can easily make this group or this person or whatever, or this news story, whatever it is, the bad thing. And all of a sudden people have a common talking point, the gossip as such, that they can start talking about. Having that common enemy, people start bonding, and then they actually start going, and this is going to take me to my next point as such, but it's what happens is that they feel so connected with these other people that they start going down this rabbit hole to have more to talk about, to actually find out more about it, or someone else can all of a sudden have their sense of significance and telling them, oh my God, did you hear what happened now? Did you hear what that idiot did now? Do you know what happened? And that common enemy issue, it's just so popularized in today's current society that it just becomes a very natural thing. And so like, I mean, so to your example, it's if the Democrats are in power, whatever it is, and all of a sudden they have the common enemy of the Republicans, and you have 50% of the population sitting there going like, oh my God, can you believe this is the legislation that they're trying to pass? Now all of a sudden 50% of the population have a common enemy that they can talk about, and the news media knows that they can sell more advertising space associated with that because they've got 50% of the population that wants to hear, what did that enemy do now? What did that son of a bitch do now? It's just such a powerful thing. And I will take it to the mental level, but before we go there, again, it's just like that is my thought about that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's amazing because intellectually we may know this doesn't make sense. I think you said about having a common enemy, like there's no way I would talk to this person otherwise. I've also experienced the flip side of that, where sometimes I've talked to somebody for a really long time and then I found out they had a particular view, and then all of a sudden even though I know better, my impression or my feelings towards them changed. I'm like, what are you doing? It's just so ingrained in us. It's so wired in us. And something else I was thinking about what you were talking about, and usually most of the year out of the country. And again, this is me knowing better. I know that if I put on MSNBC for a while, I'm one of those guys I like to flip between the two just to see how the divide,
Radically different they are.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's completely different stories on each one. So like I'll go from MSNBC to NBC to Fox and back and forth. I don't go as extreme as I think there's Newsmax and other things. I don't know much about them, but I know that those kind of went way out to the fringes. But I'll flip back and forth. And even though I know better, and I'm like, hey, look, this is performative, this is to sell ad space, this is to make people upset, it really does affect me. Like when we're overseas, we a lot of times can't get the normal channels, but we on YouTube now you can get anything. So we'll pull up Fox and MSNBC, ones I just mentioned, and there's an undertone of anger or just depression. And it lasts all day. So if I turn that on for fucking 5 minutes in the morning, I'm like, why do I feel like shit today? And it's because I started my day watching, and it's so wired in us, like I can't fight it off. And I imagine it's the same for most people.
I would say so too. And now what I want to do is I want to take it to actually the mental level, because this is obviously the stuff I like to talk about. So we've spoken before about the concept of the 6 human needs. And to me, I always talk about the most important ones to me to actually talk to people before we actually get to the deeper work after the first 4 are settled is really the first 4. So let's discuss what the first 4 human needs are. And again, I want to describe this in terms of like, we're not talking about food, clothing, and shelter. We're talking about human emotional needs. And the other thing is, I'm specifically using the word need here. This isn't something that people like to have. This is actually, in my opinion, wired into their neurology as something that they need to have. So the very first human need, and I believe that we discussed this before, is the need for certainty. So as a human being, you actually need to feel certain about a certain number of things. Otherwise, you can't actually function in this world. If you woke up in the morning and you were laying on your bed and you had this thought in the back of your mind of like, oh gosh, I don't really know if the floor will be able to support me when I step out of bed, or if I could fall through the floor. you're afraid to leave your bed, right? But like having the certainty that the world is the way the world is in certain ways, in certain very specific ways, you're able to function in the world. And the less amount of certainty you have, the more scary the world seems to you as a whole. So let's call it certainty and security as such. Now, the interesting thing is the second human need right above that is the need for uncertainty, the need for variability. So if you feel too comfortable in the world, if everything in the world feels absolutely right to you and everything is just exactly the way it is, something inside of you sits there going like, what the hell am I living for? This is the most boring place I could ever possibly imagine. I need something different in my life. Otherwise, everything is the same at all times. And so it's actually a need that you need to have some kind of an element of something shifting inside of you, something inside of you that actually feels different on some level. So just as much as there's a need for certainty, the next need, which is obviously very contrasting to it, is the need for uncertainty, the need for variability. Something in your life has to be different. And if there isn't something in your life different, because it's a need, you're going to start filtering for those differences to start seeing, how is my life different? Because otherwise, what am I doing here? Now let's jump to the third human need, which is the need for significance. So in this world, you need to know that you matter on some level. If in this world you feel like absolutely invisible to the whole entire planet, like you don't matter at all, your sense of self-worth, your sense of self-esteem is shot, and you become depressive because you don't feel like there's anything in this world that in any way you're affecting. So if you feel completely insignificant to every single person, every single way, it's a surefire key to suicidal depression, not just depression, because you just don't feel like this world actually in any way needs you in it. It's kind of like that concept of the movie It's a Wonderful Life. It's like, if I were to die, no one would make a difference. And the thing that shifted for him was that sense of significance of going like, oh gosh, if I didn't exist, this world would be a very different place. And then the interesting thing, so significance is that sense of I matter, I'm important, etc. And again, contrasting to that need is the need for love and connection. So just as much as you want to make yourself so important, on the other side, you don't want to make yourself so important that no one in the world cares about you because you're a narcissist. So on the other side of it, you also want to feel connected with others and that other people are in the same tribe as you. You can't be the leader to everyone and just be the most important person in the world, because then there's no peers in your life. There's no one that matters to you. And in the same way, if you just feel like no one that you're connected with, then what are you doing? Then again, you're important, but you're not important to anyone because you're just too important. And so at that point in time, if you don't have love and connection, you're lost there too. And so those are, in my opinion, the four things that at the deepest level drive human beings from an emotional level. And now I know that this doesn't really make sense yet in terms of the being addicted to bad things in the world, whatever it is. But now let's connect it. So to me, the two biggest ones that tend to show up are the need for certainty and the need for significance in modern day society. And the reason why that happens is because the way society is, the way that you go to school and you're just another kid sitting at a desk among 30 other desks, you begin to feel very insignificant. When you're just another kid in the family, you're insignificant. When you're just another cog in the wheel, nothing inside of you tends to matter. And when you feel insignificant, you still have a need for significance. You still have a need to know that you matter. And one of the easiest ways to get sorry, I just saw that the thing was uploading. Sorry. So the way that you actually meet that need for significance is by actually looking at the world and realizing the fact that something here, that you matter to something in this world. And when you see a news story and you all of a sudden realize that it's them versus us, whatever it is, and then you can actually talk to people about it, what happens is you actually start realizing the fact that there's other people, you get the connection along with it. There's other people that you connect with upon this. And at the same time, you are more important than those idiots that are doing those things, right? So like those people are doing all this, but look at us. We're so special. It's the us versus them mentality. And it's specifically the us versus them mentality, which creates within you that sense of connection and significance at the same time. Now, so the reason why I view this to be as such a large addiction in today's society is because, again, going back to that concept of being another cog in the wheel, because you don't actually view yourself as worthy, and because society right now has us that we don't view ourselves as significant enough in so many other ways, we're looking for tiny little glimpses of significance. And because it's a need inside of us. So if I don't feel significant because I don't feel worthy, The way I'll feel significant is by having a strong enough view that I can go ahead and talk to other people about, and people will think I'm so intelligent for the thoughts I have about it. Whereas if a person was genuinely feeling significant enough inside of themselves, I don't think that this insane amount of news coming at you and all the bad stuff happening would affect you as much, and it wouldn't hit you as deeply, because you'd go like, yeah, that's a big thing, but I've got other important things going on in my life. When you don't have important things going on in your life, everything around you seems that much bigger and that much more important, and there's that many more people you can talk to about it. Then I will talk about certainty and uncertainty, but again, I just want to stop there for a moment and make sure that all makes sense, and ask and have you just like help me just lock in those thoughts.
It's like the perfect shitstorm of everything. Everybody wants to feel significant. Everybody wants to be, they think they want to be at the top, and then you hear from people that are at the top of something that they're lonely. They wish they had more peers. The push and pull there. If we don't have any perceived problems, like for example, if every issue on my to-do list I checked off this morning, at some point this afternoon, I'm going to make something up that's not a real problem. Because you're
Welcome
right.
to the world of variability and uncertainty, right?
Yeah, we're like, because there's a good quote about it out there somewhere, but it's like, oh shit, like I've got nothing to worry about today. Like our brains are going to start looking for problems. I'll start looking for things. Oh fuck, I need to do this, I need to do that. So yeah,
so I'll give you two sayings that really match this perfectly. The first one is, the idle mind is the devil's playground, which is exactly that. Like, I mean, when you don't have stuff to think about, your brain is going to come up with stuff to think about, because it has that need for variability, for uncertainty. And the other one is the exact opposite of it. If you want something done, give it to a busy person, because a person that's not busy just can focus on it for way too long, because this is the only thing that they've got going on. Whereas a busy person just gets it done because they got to move on.
You're behind that person in Starbucks that takes forever to order, that the rest of their life must just be so whatever. Because if you can't even walk up to a counter in a place that you've been probably 100 times at least and not know what you want and stare at the menu, knowing there's people behind you waiting, like that's just so indecisive. So that's what reminded me of when you brought that up. But yeah, there's so many different ways we could take this, but it just sounds like the perfect storm of, then we're talking about thinking about being significant or insignificant, that the people we do see on most of these channels are like young and good looking, and or even older and in great shape or whatever. It's not real, but the bar's set real high in our minds anyway. And then having the tribal common enemy thing, it just, fuck, it's the more we talk about, the worse it gets.
What I want you to just really think about, like, and this is one of the main reasons why I created Human Evolution Movement in the first place, because at the end of the day, if you don't control what's in here, there's people with a very strong agenda to get as many of those green pieces of paper inside of your wallet as possible that are going to be doing it for you. Right? So like, I mean, so they will very easily control you by getting the most beautiful people in front of you and have you feel a sense of kinship and connection with them, and have you feel significant, and have you go down their rabbit hole, because as long as you're down their rabbit hole, they can control the content that you're seeing, and specifically the ads you're seeing, etc. And as they find out more information about you, they can just keep making you feel so stuck in that rabbit hole, because it's an addictive thing. Like as the Facebook algorithm, the Twitch algorithm, whichever one it is, those algorithms are very good at giving you the stuff that just exactly resonates with you enough in terms of that sense of connection, and in terms of that sense of significance, in terms of like, I knew that this was real. I knew that this was what was going on with COVID. No one else spoke about it. I knew that this was going on with Republicans and no one was talking about it. But the thing that you don't realize is that they're narrowcasting to you the specific things that make you feel like that you are the most important person, and that your group of people is this group of people that you all of a sudden feel so connected with. And as long as you're in their ecosystem, they can keep feeding you all the ads, etc., that keep that moving for you. Now, from the other side of it, the reason why I said I was so important, the Human Evolution Movement was so important to me, is the moment that you actually step out of that and you actually put yourself higher up on the totem pole, and you take the things that actually matter to you in life, in terms of like the things you want to create, the sense that you have, your sense of self, and you actually make that stronger inside of yourself. What happens is, now that you're controlling the inside and someone else shows you something, you go, you know what, that's really important, but I'll get to it later. I'm too busy working on orchestrating and designing my own life the way it needs to be. So when you have a strong pull towards something, and when you feel significant because you've actually designed, this is what I want my life to be about, what happens is those people that have those carrots in front of you don't have a carrot that's big enough anymore, because you've actually created the carrot that completely pulls you forward. And you've got such a strong sense of self inside of yourself that you sit there going, you don't doubt that what you're doing is going to make a difference, or that it actually is important to you. And therefore, when someone tells you this is more important, you go, I'm listening to you, but I just don't feel it is.
Noticed a lot when I started traveling, my mindset shifted, and I look at it as different planes to be on. You could be down here, like in my little political party with my own little group of friends, and then you kind of expand that a little bit. One of the examples I always use is that on my Facebook feed, for example, I have a lot of very left leaning friends and very right. So all my old military and law enforcement buddies are on there, and I'll see a post from them, and then the next one down will be some post from some friend of a girlfriend that I had that was, very far left. And I'm like, holy shit, like these are both very compelling, but I'm getting both. I have the luxury of getting both. As weird as they are, but I can imagine if I was just getting one side of that, I'd be all worked up too, but until
Of course.
you kind of expand a little bit and kind of, I don't want to call it a higher level of consciousness, but what's his name? Ken Wilber writes all those books on integration. Like you're describing, like I'm going to put myself above all this. I'm still going to recognize it, and I still understand I have to fit in and deal with this weird neighbor over here and this weird neighbor over here, and I want to be cordial and everything else, but I don't have to get so worked up about things because I have something specific in my own life that I'm doing. I always call it, I feel like a global citizen because I go to these places and I feel like, oh my God, we're all connected. All the bullshit I heard when I was back in the States about how this country's a shithole or that one's whatever is just not true for the most part. So anyway, I have experienced this of just kind of getting to a little bit higher level, but I would imagine that'd be very, very hard to do for somebody they went to school, they're doing their career, they have their day in, their day out, they have their children and everything else. So as part of what you do, like what are some of the techniques that somebody can break out of that? Because
I love the fact you brought up the concept of traveling, because I've actually spoken to a close friend of mine about this quite a bit, that when you are with the same group of friends over and over again, there's going to be very little, back to the first two needs, there's going to be very little variability. You know each other's stories, you know what the person did yesterday, you know what the person did last week. So when you get together, what are you going to talk about? You're going to talk about current events. Like, can you believe what Trump or Biden or Fauci did or whatever it is, however that goes. And you're going to have those different conversations going on because that is what that's the variability factor. And the thing that he says is the thing that worked out so well for him is he's gone traveling, has become a digital nomad. And he's like, these conversations don't come up because I'm talking to someone from Finland that I've just met for the first time. And he's going to be gone in 2 weeks' time. And then I'm going to meet someone else. And there's always new things to talk about. Who the hell cares about politics at that point in time? Like, yes, it might come up in terms of like, can you believe what's going on in this situation? But it doesn't need to completely overtake the conversation because there's so many other things to talk about with someone that's new to you. And there's so much more variability going on, which is to the second human need, that sense of uncertainty, the sense of having more to talk about. And so to answer your question in terms of like what I do with people is people need to create that sense of variability in their own lives in the same way. And so if your life is just more ho-hum, I'm doing the same thing, there's nothing there that actually truly inspires you. You're going to, like we just said, you're going to be the person standing at Starbucks that says, like, imagine this, a person walks into Starbucks and Starbucks just made the most perfect, amazing coffee that is exactly their taste. They walk into Starbucks, they're going, I'm going to have that mocha macchiato, blah, 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 whatever the hell that thing is, right? Because they know exactly what they want because inside of themselves, they feel pulled towards it. The person that's standing at Starbucks and is sitting there like agonizing over their decision for 30 minutes, what they're doing is that they're sitting there, they don't have a clue what they want, they have no sense of strong pull towards anything. And so like they're going, do I want a coffee or do I want milk in my coffee? Do I want an espresso or do I want whatever? And so what I do with people is I want them to really reconnect with what it is inside of them that truly feels like their deepest inspiration. What is a thing that feels like the new thing on the Starbucks menu? And then what we do with that is it's not about creating the dopamine hit, which is this thing I was going to talk about more. It's not about creating the dopamine hit of like, I'm going to create this beautiful, large dream for myself, because as we know, dreams never become reality. What we do is we break it down into what can you on a daily basis do that leaves you feeling inspired about your life, that leaves you feeling excited about where you're moving towards. And as you on a daily basis, just keep moving towards your inspiration and feel. There was a book written in I think it was like the late 90s about the concept of the flow state. And what this guy did, it's a Russian name and I'm never going to get it right. But basically what he did was he analyzed people that were just naturally in the flow state, whether they were sports people or artists or anything else. And what he discovered was that the flow state had a very specific strategy for people to get there. And what he said was, and the one thing that stuck out for me was, you want to feel 54% challenged. And he actually gave it a number. Maybe it was 56% challenge, whatever it was. But the idea of that is you don't want to feel like you're so overwhelmed by this large vision that you have no clue where to go about it. And so you're feeling overwhelmed, and you're feeling so overwhelmed that you're losing your sense of certainty. And how do you get your certainty back? You go back to the things that actually make you feel certain, like, let me forget about my huge vision and let me go back to paying attention to what happened on the news today. But you also don't want to get to the point that you don't feel challenged at all, that you're so bored that you go, well, let me now think about it for like the next 30 hours and figure out what Starbucks flavor I want. But if you are just past your level of comfort, just past it, that you actually need to stretch yourself just a bit and get to that next level, what happens then is you're constantly in that state of feeling like you're expanding a bit, like you got that little bit of uncertainty, but just enough certainty to keep you moving forward. And so what I do with people is help them create that vision for themselves and then create the steps in their lives so they're constantly feeling just challenged enough, yet not overwhelmed that they need to go back to the thing that feels so natural to them. Like, let's just go back to social media or NBC or CBS News or whatever it is, because that's where my certainty is. My certainty is in my vision, and the specific actions I'm taking on a daily basis, I feel like they're moving me towards my vision, and they're just challenging enough to keep me feeling significant, certain, and just uncertain enough.
As far as flow state goes, or when I'm trying to tackle something that may be challenging for me, I have I have a little Pomodoro timer app on my phone. Newport, or one of the professors, was saying that it takes about 15 minutes for you to actually to get into what you're doing, which is 100% true. I could walk around here all day with a long list of things I need to do, or things that are like challenging, like you said, and not fall back into my defaults. And I could sit down and just stare at this computer, and it literally takes 10 to 15 minutes. And all of a sudden, when I'm in it, the timer will go off. And this could apply to other things, doesn't have to be computer work. But the timer will go off and says, take your break. I'm like, I'm not ready for a break. I just want to keep going through. But man, getting started is super hard. And it's obviously building habits has a lot to do with that as well. But I think that a lot of people, especially now, I mean, our lives are so regimented and convenient. And like, we're at a weird time in the human race where we have all this technology and all these cool things, but one really doesn't have to do much on a daily basis. Like, I can order all my groceries right now, and like, I don't have to do shit if I don't want to. So it is hard, I would imagine, to kind of flex the muscle. And what is that new part of the brain, or that, not the new part of the brain, but the one they've been speaking about a lot on Huberman lately and everything else, that it actually does grow when you do. It's like they associate it with willpower,
the will to
and
survive.
longevity.
Yeah.
And
I'm not going to remember the name of it, but yeah.
It's like the anterior mid-cingulate cortex or something like that, but I probably got that wrong. That's not going to show up well in the transcript. It's probably going to show up as a fucking some Star Trek thing, in Klingon. But the news is that does grow. Like, it literally grows inside your brain, but it's like something that you can build. So build a small habit. I like using the one with a guy that went to the gym in Atomic Habits. He was trying to exercise and lose weight. He would set his alarm one morning for the first week, and he would just roll out of bed and put his gym clothes on and then go back to bed. And then a few days later, he would set his alarm, go downstairs, get into his car, and then go back upstairs. And then a week later, he would go to the gym. Yeah, and it sounds really silly, but the guy ended up losing a ton of weight because he was like, okay, I don't have to go to the gym tomorrow and do a shitload of stuff. I can just drive to the gym, because eventually he did that. He drove to the gym, went in the front door, turned around, went back out again. And then he developed a gym habit, but he took it really slow, man.
That together. And to me, that is, so imagine that you set yourself the goal of going to the gym, and you've got everything set up, and your alarm clock goes off, and you get dressed and you go to the gym, and there's something inside of you that goes, I'm just so freaking tired. I just can't do this anymore. You're past the point of 54% challenge. And so you might do that as long as the adrenaline and the dopamine in your system is going. But at some point in time, you're just going to oversleep. Now, if you always stick at 54% challenge, like you said, the part of your brain grows. So the first morning that your alarm clock goes off and you just turn off the alarm clock, that is more of a challenge than staying asleep. The next day you put on your clothes, and maybe you do that for a week, whatever it is. And that's the 54% challenge. Now your brain, the part of your brain grows, and that's okay. And as long as you just keep growing it, the thing is, so many people assume that in order to get to a result, and Alex Hormozi said it, it's so many people have said it, but I just love Alex Hormozi. He's like, if you want to see how successful a person is, don't pay attention to what they've got planned for the next 6 months or 12 months. Pay attention to what they got for the next 10 years. And in the same way, if you want to get thin, if you really want to get fit and go to the gym, if it takes you 3 months to get into the gym and start training, but you actually make it into a routine, And then you start training. And then like your next 3 months in the gym are just stretching, like just sitting at the gym stretching. And then 3 months after that, you actually start like lifting some weights and you start doing things and you start meeting people. And then all of a sudden you get the connection of the people at the gym and you start knowing the people, and the cute girl over there waves at you at the right time. And you're like, oh gosh, I love it. I love it. I've got connection. I got significance, whatever it is. Fast forward that over 10 years. And next thing you know, you don't even know how, but you all of a sudden became a power lifter, and it's back to the idea of 54% challenge. It's not about trying to get everything done right the first time. It's about having a vision and actually creating inside of yourself the actual habits that will move that vision forward, while the vision keeps inspiring you and everything you do along the way matches into you and just stretches you just that little bit further every single time. And society today is so simple that everyone can just order stuff on Amazon and do everything that they want. You don't even need to do anything. And the challenge with that is, again, that creates so much certainty inside of you that it becomes a very natural thing to do. So if you're at the place that you stretch yourself too far and you feel overwhelmed, what's going to happen in your brain after the dopamine rush wears off is you're going to go back to the sense of certainty, because now you got too much uncertainty in your life. And you're going to be like, do you know what? It's just easier for me to just pay attention to that news and think about how terrible things are and whatever it is, because then I get my sense of certainty and everything feels good. And I get my sense of uncertainty because there's new news coming in. And then I get to find out about what this idiot did today. And I get my sense of significance because all of a sudden I feel better than them. I get my sense of connection because I get to realize how many other people think like me. Whereas if you're constantly growing at just the right amount and you're constantly focused in on your vision, but it's about doing the habits that get you there, what happens is that keeps feeling so good. And now when you think about the stupid certainty that you got by reading the news, there's something inside of you that says, I could do that, but like I've got so much certainty in terms of the fact that I'm moving forward and I'm proud of myself. I've got certainty in terms of the fact that I feel solid in my body and I've got a vision and I see myself moving towards it. And that's the difference that makes a difference.
Yeah, to beat on the gym thing, but going to the gym is one of the things you actually get almost immediate feedback, because the pump you get, when you're done working out, that's what you could look like in a month or two's time, or depending upon your metabolism and everything else. So like you can actually see like, oh shit, this is what I might look like in a few months if I keep this up. And some things are easy. That's an easy example. Some things you don't get that immediate feedback loop. But like you said, just hacking away at it, not making it something so insurmountable. So at least in this generation, we're not going to overpower our instincts and wiring to an extent. I mean, obviously we can be mindful, we can meditate and do those other things, but it sounds like instead of trying to fight against the negative emotions we get from watching the news and everything else, obviously we should recognize and be like, hey, this is upsetting me. Maybe I need to stop watching this or anything else. But it sounds like we really just need to have a higher personal purpose, just to kind of bring yourself out of it, and still recognizing everything else that's going on in the world. Obviously, you can't avoid bad news, and you can't avoid people and everything else.
One of my favorite sayings, and I believe I said this to you before, but it's really one of my favorite sayings I use with clients all the time. It was like during some war, let's just call it the Vietnam War, whatever it was, and Mother Teresa went to visit a group of people, whatever it was, and they said to her, will you come with us and march against the war in Vietnam? And she said, I will never march against war. I'm never, ever going to be the person that marches against war. But if you ever have a march for peace, I'll be there. Sure. And to your point, the logic is, if you're trying to fight something off, you're giving it all of your attention. You're fighting it off. But my logic is, don't try fight against all that the media has done for you, all that's going on in social media, because all you're doing is now all of a sudden you're just creating yourself a new thing that's the enemy. And now you've got your common enemy there and everything that you're focused in on. Rather, just focus in on the person that you're choosing to be. And the thing I always try to get in my clients' minds is try be the example of the best version of yourself. So don't go up against the news outlets or against all the terrible stuff that's going on. When you're sitting with your friends and they go, can you believe what this idiot did today, or whatever it is? You go, oh my God, no, I didn't hear about that. So let me tell you about what's going on with me. You can hear it, you can take it in, but you don't need to sit there and just go completely against it and have your new common enemy and go down that path. You can sit there and say, you know what, that's absolutely amazing. Now tell me what's going on in your life that you're really passionate about. Did I tell you about the new thing I'm doing? It's really blowing me away. And you're not going against them. You're like, they can continue to have their conversation. You're just like, I've had enough of that energy. I'm moving beyond that now. I'm not interested in continuing that. Mother Teresa was definitely not a fan of the Vietnam War. But her
Right.
logic was, I want to focus in on solidarity. I want to focus in on people being together. Why in the world would I keep telling people how bad the war in Vietnam is, as opposed to sit there saying the world needs more peace?
You're expending energy either way. So why would you, dig yourself a hole? Cynicism is a proxy for intelligence. So
I love
negative
that.
comments and everything else, like people just saying negative things, do like the idea of shifting the conversation into something, and people love talking about themselves. So to break somebody out of that, if you're in a group of people and they're spouting off about one of the parties or something like that, just ask them to tell you something about themselves. That should be the easiest thing
one of
for
my
people to talk
one of
about.
my favorite questions, and it just always moves people, is like, it's, what are you passionate about? Like, tell me something that you're passionate about that's really happening for you. And it's different from asking a person like, so tell me what you do for a living, because they're like, I'm a computer
Mm-hmm.
programmer, or I walk dogs, whatever it is. But when you ask a person, what is it that really lights you up, what happens is you're pulling them out of that place, but you're still giving them that sense of significance and that sense of connection right away, because you're a person that actually cares about them. You create eye contact and you're like, tell me what's important to you in life. It's like in everyone, it's, what's that saying? Everyone is always trying to tune into the exact same radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, and so like knowing that, and you talk to people, you can share with them the stuff that's going on in your life, but at the same time, you just really, really ask them, like, so tell me what's important in your life. Like, what are the things that really matter to you? Oh, I get about the politics, and that's awesome. And yeah, we'll talk about that a bit, but okay, fine. So we've spoken about the US politics and everything else. So what's going on in your life that you're really excited about right now? And
Yeah.
as long as you're not doing it in a bad way or anything else to specifically change the conversation, you're just sitting there saying, I'm done talking about the war. Let's talk about peace. Like, let's actually move this conversation forward. And just
Yeah.
to take this, like, and so we started off this conversation with the news outlets and everything else. And like we said about people being addicted to trauma. But the truth is, it's the better way to say it is people are just addicted to drama as such, DRAMA, in terms of the fact that there's always going to be that little part inside of you that wants to just basically, when you don't feel significant enough and when you don't feel connected enough, drama as a whole sits there saying, you're the bad person, I'm the good person. This bad thing happened. Look at how important I am. It's like, this is what's going on and I'm aware of it. Look at my sense of certainty. This is what's going on and my life is boring, so I can pay attention to all these different things. And so that's my sense of uncertainty. And the whole idea is understanding the fact that this is the way you are. I'm not saying rewire yourself completely. What I'm saying is develop a large enough vision of something that truly inspires you, that creates that sense of certainty and uncertainty. And don't make it so big that all of a sudden it takes away from your sense of certainty. Make it big enough, 54% challenging, that you actually keep moving towards it and you feel like you're growing, which is actually the sixth human need, which we never even got into, that you feel like you're growing and actually evolving. And as you keep moving through that, what happens is you start feeling more significant in your life, because now all of a sudden, look at me, I'm actually doing stuff and people are noticing it. Isn't that amazing? And you start feeling connected with other people, because all of a sudden other people start looking up to you and they're going like, what are you doing differently? And you start meeting your human needs on such a deeper level, as opposed to sitting there going, do you know what my boyfriend did today? Or do you know what my wife did today? Or do you know what Fauci did today? Whatever it is, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
What the other side is, the trick is really connect deep within yourself with the things that bring you that sense of happiness and move it forward with consistent small habits.
I will make one more claim just from traveling and being away from American media for a while. I've noticed that if I'm gone for 6 months, and I'm not saying people have to do this, but if I'm gone for 6 months and I don't watch any American news and I come back, guess what? It didn't matter. I didn't
Very
miss
little
anything.
changed, right?
Something else to keep in mind as well, that we can get so wrapped up in watching these things and social media, the news, and just letting it screw your head up every single day. And then if you're away from it for long enough, you come back and there are things you need to be informed about, of course, but you didn't miss a thing. So people need to stop worrying about that, because that's also, I think it's a FOMO thing, or fear of missing out. Like some people, like, I got to watch the news, I got to know what's going on.
So what I'll say about that is, like, to me, it's kind of like the dopamine detox, right? They're so good at hitting you with all the bad stuff that you really it hits you in all the right receptors because they know how to do it. But like, you actually had the experience, and I hope and pray that some more of our listeners do, of like going to that 10-day meditation retreat when you stopped paying attention to anything but yourself for 10 days. And when you got off of it, you had the sense of centeredness inside of yourself. You had the sense of purpose inside of yourself until social media caught back up with you, kind of thing. And so my girlfriend and I, Joy and I, almost never watch the news. And like, it's so once a morning, I get like my little email or I go through my Google News feed and I'll see what's going on. Or when I go to a party, I'm actually excited to hear what my friends' views are about things and I learn from it. And the thing is, because I don't know that much, I get to ask really interesting questions and they get to get their sense of significance by answering the right things for me. And then I get the information I need and then I'll talk to another person about it in whatever way. But I don't need to make that the focus of my life. I don't need to make that larger than 5% of my mental capacity. It's enough that I know what's going on. It's enough that people talk about it. It's enough that I know what's happening. I read the news every day to whatever degree it is. And then I move on with my life because my life is just way too important to focus in on other people's stories. At the end of the day, when I die, I wrote my own story. The only thing that really matters is how much did I enjoy the story that I lived in. That has nothing to do with anyone else's.
There's another quick little quote that I remember now. American dream has turned into work for 30 years at a job, doing the same thing, retire, and then yell at cable news until you die. Like that's our plan, which is very cynical. But I mean, there's a lot of people that do that.
They're cynical, but like, I mean, if you just look at society today, it's not completely out the realm of like what is really happening, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got exciting stuff coming up too. This episode's going to go out on Thursday the 29th. Yeah. And next week, I believe it's the 6th of September, we will all be in Florida together, and we're going to do a live stream webinar, whatever you want to call it, live summit, whatever the kids are calling it these days. But we're going to go live on this platform. And of course, it'll be available in recording form after the fact to announce a new community that we're joining forces with dietitian Brittany. And we've spoken about this in previous episodes. We've had her on a couple of times. This will be separate from the human evolution movement, but it'll be kind of everything that human evolution movement is here to accomplish, but also adding the dietary and lifestyle factors to it as well. So all the material will still be available on the HEM side of things. And we're going to keep everything the way we have it, the podcast and everything else. But there will be a greater opportunity to join a community, a circle community, and we'll have links and everything else for that, where you can get access to Ori and Brittany and all of her material, all of Ori's material. We'll have some office hours. We'll have some weekly things. It's being built in public, meaning we don't have all the details ironed out yet, but that's okay because we want to get some of you in there so that we can get your feedback and hold it to be focused on the member, because we want it to be a great experience. For that will be officially announced, I believe, next week, and we'll go into a beta launch. And so that's a week from now. It's a good.
I believe my listeners already probably like Brittany more than they like me, because she is one of the most dynamic, sweetest people you'll ever meet. I'm just so excited to like get a chance to do this with her. It's like, I mean, it's one of my biggest issues, and I think I've actually mentioned this before. I can work with a person on the mental aspect as much as I can, kind of thing. But like at the end of the day, if your body's too weak, if your hormones are out of whack, if you're just affected by your environment too much, regardless what happens in your brain, your body just can't follow suit. And the thing I love is the fact that like Brittany is just so intelligent with the way that she works with people to actually make those shifts with them, that the kind of stuff I do with them can actually hit that much harder and make that much more of a change for them. And in the same way, Brittany's just on the exact opposite side, where she can do all the physical changes, but if a person is too busy self-sabotaging themselves, they just never get the results. And so this collaboration, it just feels like a gift from God in so many different ways. I'm just so excited to get a chance to work with her. And it's always been my vision. And I just think that this actually just takes it and puts it on steroids, where we get a chance to help people at a level that separately, I just don't think we could have done apart. Super, super excited about it.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, you'll be seeing us live from whatever the Fort Lauderdale Beach Hilton has to offer. Hopefully we're not crammed into somebody's hotel room if conference rooms are taken, but to be continued.
Thanks, Lee.
Hey everyone, it's Lee. Just one more thing before you go. If you've ever wondered if journaling could change your life, you can find out for free by downloading the Emotional Alchemy Journal from the link in the description. Also, if you're looking to connect with people who are just as passionate about growth as you are, check out our Facebook community. It's a great place to discuss what you've heard on the podcast and get access to exclusive content and sessions that are only available there. Just search for Human Evolution Movement on Facebook, or you can find the link in the description. Until next time, keep challenging the chaos within, be a little kinder to yourself, and let's continue to evolve together.